Hello everyone, I welcome you all to today's weekly wrap-up session, and here we are basically going to look at most important news which were there in this particular week. So starting from February of 9th up till February 15th, whatever news we have covered in our daily news analysis, out of those news which are more important for us, we are going to cover all of these in this weekly wrap-up. So this would be a short session. If you want a longer discussion, please go through the detailed analysis in the daily news analysis. Here what we are going to do is going to tell you the important news and what is the basic crux of that particular news only. Okay, so without wasting any time, let's look at the first news headline. So the first news which we are going to cover is MP Dam project in submerged critical tiger corridor, NTCA. So there is an authority known as National Tiger Conservation Authority, and as the name suggests, the job of this particular authority is to conserve tiger. And there is a report wherein a new irrigation project has been announced by the state of MP, Madhya Pradesh, wherein it is being stated that if that particular irrigation project is gone through, then it might lead to submergence of certain critical tiger corridor. Now what exactly is a tiger corridor? So basically it is possible that there is a particular tiger in a particular reserve and he has a lot of area, under his influence, whatever terminology which we use. So it is possible that particular tiger might be migrating between one particular reserve and to another particular reserve. So a forest area is usually not secluded, and it is not like that there is a particular forest area and it is covered by, or it is surrounded by, let's say, urban area. There might be a forest area, it might be interconnected with another larger forest area or a reserve area, and usually the thing or the route which basically covers those which connects those particular forest area is known as a tiger corridor. Okay, and because of this particular irrigation project which is being planned in the state of MP, two tiger reserves which are interconnected by a corridor might get submerged, and it might lead to destruction of the tiger area also, and moreover the movement of tiger would also get restricted. So now it has been argued that this should be again looked into, the project should be again looked into, and accordingly certain alternatives should be suggested. So in this case we have discussed NTA also, which is a statutory body. What is a statutory body? Statutory body is a body created under a particular act, and this NTA was created under Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, and in this act this body was created with the purpose to conserve tigers, and this functions under Ministry of Environment and Forest and established in 2006. Okay, so this was your first news. Moving on to the next news, another important thing which we discussed this particular week was regarding India's AI mission, and in this AI mission we have announced an initiative of rupees 10,371 crore, and the initiative is making AI in India and making AI for India. Very easy to remember, making AI in India and making AI for India. And for this particular submission under Indian AI mission, we had announced 10,000 rupees 371. And what is the main theme, sub theme of this particular project? So yes, we are going to promote those particular companies, those particular research institutions which are basically working in the AI sector in India. But at the same time, we are also going to focus on global collaborations also. And in this context, we also discuss certain global AI cooperation. For example, the first thing which we discussed was global partnership on AI. And India is a founding member and 2024 lead chair, basically the chairman of this particular grouping for the year 2024. Now this particular GPAI is an OECD backed initiative, so I hope you are aware of the full form of this particular organization. So whatever you know about OECD, if you don't, please try to research it. If you know, please mention it in the comments. Whatever you can recall, try to recall if you watch this particular news analysis also. India seeks to make GPAI as a central platform for global AI cooperation. So now what India decided, that whatever is the framework laid down by the GPAI, it is going to be the framework being utilized by India for your global partnership in artificial intelligence, irrespective of with which country with which we are partnering. Next is bridging the AI divide. So again, we are also focusing on bridging the AI divide. What is the understanding of this bridging the AI divide? So you can see here that there are certain countries, specifically the Western countries and including China, which are way ahead when it's come to development or research in the AI sector, and there are certain countries like majorly the underdeveloped countries like your African countries, which are way behind in the AI development. So here we are trying to bridge the AI divide, so that there is some fair play when it's come to competition in the AI sector also. Third is prioritizing the global south. Whenever you hear the word global south, just think of the developing countries and the underdeveloped countries. Global south refers to grouping of the developing and the underdeveloped countries of the world. Initially it was basically used for trade purposes, but now this term has become universal to refer to the developing and underdeveloped countries, and here the India is going to prioritize the global south also. Again, an important initiative under India's AI mission. Okay, let's move to the next news. Next news was regarding European Free Trade Agreement. So recently it was also reported that Switzerland has suspended India's MFN status for DTAA, and last year only we had signed a free trade agreement with EFTA. So this European Free Trade Association is basically an organization. It's a grouping of 4 important European countries, and these 4 countries have a FTA between them, which means that all of their export-import policy is same with each other. And these being very small countries, what they do, they come together and then they try to sign a free trade agreement or a trade agreement with a third country. And now with India they signed a particular FTA last year only, and now there is being questions regarding the EFTA agreement. Why? Because Switzerland has just suspended our DTAA. Would it or would it not is going to impact the EFTA or FTA which we had with EFTA. So in this context, let's understand which are the countries which are part of EFTA. So European Free Trade Association consists of 4 countries: your Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway and Switzerland. Okay, so these are the 4 countries which are part of your EFTA. It is headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland. And which are the areas where EFTA is going to focus? It is going to focus on precision engineering, renewable energy, pharmaceuticals and financial service, because these are the areas where they have the expertise. So these are the areas whenever this particular grouping enters into a trade agreement with a third country, these are the focus areas whenever they have a FTA. Moving on to the next news. January 2025 was warmest ever, while La Nina did not bring down temperature. So as has been the case every year now, every new year is basically the warmest year on record, and every month in that particular year is the warmest month ever in the history of recording temperatures. So your January 2024 has officially been declared as, not January, but your whole of 2024 has been declared as the warmest year on record, and the January 2025 has been declared as the warmest one. So it has already beaten the record of January 24 and 23, and now this is the warmest ever record. And one of the reason being contributing to why January 2025 being the warmest is that the La Nina, which is another oceanic phenomena, its failure is one of the contributing cause for making January 2025 as one of the hottest month on record. So in this case, we also discuss what exactly is La Nina, what is El Nino, and why this has led to. So if you will look at this El Nino, this particular map, you will understand La Nina also. El Nino and La Nina are opposing climatic phenomena. And what happens in El Nino? So in a normal year, basically your warm current are moving towards Australia and finally to Indian Ocean. But in a El Nino year, the direction of the warm currents changes. So it moves towards South America, and because the water is not coming towards Indian Ocean, this leads to lack of rainfall in whatever countries, whatever cities there is a monsoon. So not just in Indian continent, wherever there is a monsoon phenomena, because of El Nino, the monsoon becomes weak. Specifically, Indian monsoon is impacted a lot. And the opposite of El Nino is La Nina. So what happens in a La Nina year? This particular normal situation is actually influenced more. So there is more warm water which is coming towards the Indian Ocean. So in a normal situation, there would be normal rainfall. But in a La Nina year, because of lot of warm water in this particular part of the ocean areas, there is a lot of rainfall. And January or the months of the second half of 2024 or the first half of 2025 was supposed to be a La Nina year, but this year La Nina did not occur, which led to more than usual warming of these particular areas, and that is one of the reasons why January 2025 is one of the warmest year ever, because it's a failure of La Nina only. Okay, so we have discussed El Nino, La Nina. Otherwise also, please look at that MIT series. You will find your answers there also. Moving on to the next one, what is the budget offered scientists? So budget was also an important topic which we covered in our previous week also, and this particular budget discussion was continuing in this particular session also. And there was a very good article, a very important article with regard to the science area in the budget. What is the allocation to the science sector, and what are the major initiatives launched in the science sector. Now, why this particular section is important? For example, if you will look at this particular scheme, bio right scheme, this was one of the scheme which was asked in your ALET examination. There was a direct question on bio right scheme. What is the objective of this particular scheme? That was one of the question. So many students many a times ask me, sir, do we need to do science section also? Do we have to go through those articles also? And this has been my recommendation always, that always go through science related news, because apart from there being direct questions on these kind of schemes, these science section or these science articles helps you with better English also, better reasoning skills also, because many a time science specific or science based articles are also asked in your exam. So it helps you improve your technical vocabulary also, and also prepares you for your reasoning section also. So always read science related context news. Okay, so there was this particular article in the explain section of your, or in the text and context section of your Hindu newspaper, and here we had discussed various funding, whatever funding allocations has been done to the science section, and what are the various science and innovation initiatives being announced in this particular budget, or more funding was provided to them. Okay, so 20,000 crore was allocated for Department of Science and Tech and private sector research and development, part of 1 lakh crore corpus fund to boost deep tech and sunrise sector. So 1 lakh crore corpus fund has also been announced to boost deep tech and sunrise. What are sunrise sectors? Sunrise sectors are your green sectors, or basically sector which are very new in the market. Green does not mean that green in the sense of climate change or being environment friendly. Green here means greenfield investment, basically means that these are the investment which are new investment. It's not something for repair or something, or for maintenance of an older scheme. Sunrise sector are basically those sectors which are totally new. For example, solar sector is one of a sunrise sector. Biotechnology is one of the sunrise sectors. Specific sections of biotechnology sectors are sunrise sectors. Moreover, there is 100 crore rupees allocated for National Geospatial Mission. So what is this new National Geospatial Mission? So what we are going to do, we are going to create a digital map of India, and every location was going to be geomarked, which is basically your longitude and latitude would be marked. Those areas would be demarcated. So let's say there is a piece of property, or let's say there is a particular farmland. So its area would be digitally marked, its particular location would be digitally marked. So let's say if any kind of scheme is to be launched, then that can be that scheme can take help from the National Geospatial Mission to understand what would be the scope of that particular scheme also. Okay, next is what are the other key science and innovation initiatives. So certain national missions were also mentioned in this particular budget. So you have your nuclear energy mission, you have your clean tech initiatives, and more for adult tinkering labs also certain initiatives were announced. Your bio right scheme was also mentioned in this particular budget. It promotes bio entrepreneurship and bio manufacturing. Basically, it is targeting more innovation in the biotechnological sector. National manufacturing mission was also mentioned, and moreover, high yielding seeds mission was also announced in this particular budget. Okay, so these were the major announcement. Moreover, there was a talk regarding the importance of your CSIR, which is another very important scientific institution of India. So aroma and floriculture mission was launched, millets and cotton mission was launched, green hydrogen mission was also talked about, youth skilling, Jigyasa program, learn and earn, seaweed missions for entrepreneurship, these were also discussed. Moreover, nuclear energy, there was a discussion regarding nuclear energy and regulatory framework, and here we have included a target to to basically increase our nuclear capacity by 100 gigawatt by the year 2047 on 100th year of our independence. We are also discussion, in the interim budget also this was discussed, that private sector participation would also be allowed in the nuclear sector also. Moreover, this is again a step forward from the interim budget only. Development of small modular reactor has also been announced, and very recently when Prime Minister Modi visited US, there also your small modular reactors and collaboration between India and US has also been announced. If you remember, in the interim budget, Bharat small reactors were announced. Basically, small reactors of capacity of 100 megawatt to up to 300 megawatt is going to be the next way in which we are going to produce nuclear energy. Moreover, Nuclear Liability and Damage Act would also be amended. There is a concern regarding it because Nuclear Liability and Damage Act basically says that whoever is a nuclear operator is going to be responsible for any kind of disaster. There's going to be absolute liability, and if you follow your law of torts classes, you will understand what exactly is absolute liability. So ask your law teacher what exactly is absolute liability. So Nuclear Liability and Damage Act might be amended because none of the foreign companies are interested in investing in India's nuclear sector unless their liability is limited. Okay, so this is something which we discussed. What were the concerns and criticism? Funding imbalance, so not all the sectors have been properly covered. Education budget shortfall, so not just in the science sector but in general in education, NEP had recommended 6% of GDP should be the 6% of GDP should be the expenditure on education, but we are as of now are only allocating 2.54%. AI and deep tech focus 10,000 crore for deep tech startup, but concerns over practical impact. So yes, we have allocated 10,000 for deep tech startups, but how we are going to implement it, there is still questions surrounding these particular. No kind of expenditure or governance model has been suggested for mental health and value-based learning also. So this is one of the concerns being pointed out for this year's budget when it's come to science sector also. Okay, so next one, in proposed immigration law, tougher rules and specific rules. So now a new bill is being introduced, immigration and foreigners bills. So we have a very outdated system of dealing with your immigration, because before since independence we have not created any law which specifically deals with our immigration issues, which deals with foreigners or which deals with refugee and asylum takers. So now what we are going to do, we are going to now finally going to have a post-independent legislation which is going to be dealing with the immigration issues and your foreigners issues also. So let's say if someone has come into India, let's say legally, but now his visa is expired and is continuing to live in India, what our authorities are supposed to do, what is the procedure going to be in that particular case, whether that person is going to get asylum in India or not. If say we are going to provide asylum, what are going to be the condition, everything is going to be part of this immigration and your foreigners bills, and it is basically going to replace outdated laws such as your passport entry into India for registration of Foreigners Act, the Foreigners Act 1946, the Immigration Carriers Liability Act 2000. Out of these four laws, Passport Entry into India Act 1920 and the Foreigners Act of 1946 are more important, because these are the laws which are basically used by the current government to basically deal with whatever immigration issues which we are facing right now. And violation of immigration law, so what are some of the suggested clauses in this particular law? Any unauthorized entry into India will lead to penalty of up to 5 lakhs. So let's say some foreigner or some person who is not an Indian citizen enters into India illegally without an authorized entry, then a penalty of up to 5 lakh rupees could be imposed. In case of a person using a fake passport, a new provision has been added where a fine of up to 10 lakhs rupees would be imposed. What are the other key features? Stricter penalties for violation. So because we had not updated our laws for since 1947, because of this, those penalties are as per that time only. So there was a urgent requirement that we should update our laws and there should be stricter penalties. Now we have clearer regulations for university and medical institution. So let's say a particular foreign student is coming to India and studying in India, then there was no clarity regarding what is the status of a education of a student, but now we have clear regulation with regard to this. Revised visa and passport rules. So yes, again our visa and passport rules were also not updated. Now the central government has been given more power when it's come to visa and passport rules, more power to immigration officers. So again, earlier there was a long drawn process. Basically the courts were usually involved at the first or the second step itself, because there was no specific powers given to immigration officers. But now to the immigration officers have been given the authority to detain, investigate and report illegal immigrants, the power to control movements of restricted foreigners, as well as right to deny entry based on security risks. So rather than going to a court and court deciding it, the immigration officer itself at the airport, or let's say at the port system, can basically decide on whether a person should be allowed entry or not. What is going to be the liability of carriers and transport operators? So now there is a liability itself on the transport operators. So let's say in whichever airline you are traveling, whatever cruise shipping you are traveling, if because of some reason some passenger has entered India through your particular your particular vehicle, then you are responsible. You also have a liability, and action is going to be taken against you if you have not followed the proper procedure. So again, now it is the carrier's duty to basically verify passenger documents before they are allowed to board a particular vehicle. Okay. Next, GDKP, our new plan to capture knowledge economy as additional GDP metric could pan out. So we are basically GDP focused, which means we measure our development on the basis of GDP. However, now we have various other measures, various other indices also to measure our development. I'm basically talking about your HDI and your MDP index, but still we are not very value centric or very knowledge centric. So now what has been recommended, that just like we have our GDP, let's have another metric like GDKP, which is basically gross domestic knowledge product. Basically how knowledge economy is helping out in your increase of GDP, and otherwise also how it is helping out. There is a proposal that apart from measuring GDP, we should also measure the outcome which is being provided by our knowledge economy also. So that has also been suggested. So for that particular purpose, there was a particular seminar being arranged by the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, and this particular session was taken by Principal Scientific Advisor of India, Ajay Kumar Sood. So remember this name also. He is a Principal Scientific Advisor to the Prime Minister, or Principal Scientific Advisor to India, and Ajay Kumar Sood is of the view that we should prepare a methodology by which we are able to basically measure what is the outcome being provided by the knowledge economy of India. So various sectors are going to be measured now separately, so that we understand what is the knowledge sector contribution is to the GDP. And here we are mainly going to focus on your tourism sector, cultural satellite accounts, ocean and blue economy. So what is the contribution of these sectors also to our economy? These are going to be separately also being provided, so that we understand that how the knowledge is going to help us in improving or in development of India. Challenges, lack of methodology. So again, this was the basic problem when it was initially also suggested. So initially GDKP formula or GDKP idea came in the year 2021. It was a Niti Aayog idea, but it was scrapped because MOSPI was of the view that we do not have a proper methodology, and whatever methodology which we are going to utilize, it is going to be very subjective. So he said, or they said, ki it's not going to be a fruitful exercise. So it was scrapped, but now we have again come to this conclusion that we should be having a particular metric to basically understand what is the contribution of our knowledge economy also. Okay. Moving on to the next news. So we also discussed that recently it was provided just 2 days ago. Your retail inflation data was there, and in the retail inflation data it was reported that our retail inflation is basically under control. It is only 4.3%, which is very near to the 4% rate. Okay. Then we discussed how retail inflation impacts the economy, that basically it leads to decrease in purchasing power and the cost of living is increasing. That's why controlling retail inflation, or to keep it in a particular into a particular area, becomes important if we want that the cost of living should not be very high. And it also leads to other policy measures also, that RBI's monetary policy is primarily decided on the basis of what is the inflation level. It impacts our savings, borrowings, as well as economic growth also. Next, we also discussed the India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor. That was also discussed, and it was in the context of our Prime Minister Modi's visit to the country of France. And here, your country of France had mentioned that Marseille is going to be another key European gateway for IMEC, and we discussed IMEC through the help of this map. So it's going to start from Mumbai. Apart from Mumbai, it's going. There is Mundra port also in Gujarat, which is also going to be one of the port of call for this particular IMEC project. Then it's going to go to UAE, and this is basically your eastern corridor, and the other is your northern corridor, where it's going to connect your UAE, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Jordan, and Greece. And now, apart from Greece, France is also going to get connected. What are the components? So there is a sea route, there is going to be a rail and road network also. Moreover, we are planning to establish energy pipelines also. So there's going to be oil and gas pipeline also on this particular route. And yes, we are also planning to improve the digital infrastructure by laying a web of your cable connection, a web of your underwater cable connection, so that digital connectivity is also increased. Moreover, we discussed that the countries which are participating country of IMEC and the root countries are different. So all of your root countries are not participating countries. All of your participant countries are not part of the root. For example, India, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Israel are the 5 countries which are part of the route and also part of the participating countries. But European countries and US, not all of them. US is actually not part of the route, but European countries, most of them are also not directly involved with IMEC also. They are, but they are going to be participating countries in the development of this particular route. And this route is very important because it is creating an alternative route for the Red Sea route, which connects your Mediterranean Sea with Indian Ocean. So this we discuss IMEC also. Next, we discuss that the CEC appointment is being challenged in the Supreme Court, and here we discuss the history of Election Commission of India. We discuss the appointment process, the historical appointment process of Election Commission of India. Then we also discuss the Anup Baranwal judgment, which was basically a Supreme Court judgment where they wanted that the process of appointment of Chief Election Commissioner should change because it is biased towards the ruling government. And then we also discuss that what is the current law, which is basically a new law being drafted by the Parliament of India in 2023, which basically provided a different selection panel for suggesting CEC. So if you remember, these 3 members, Prime Minister, your leader of opposition, were 2 members, and the third member is going to be a Union Cabinet Minister. For example, in this month only, in the month of February only, this is the last month of tenure of the current CEC, and very soon this particular selection panel is going to sit together and going to suggest a new name for the next CEC. And in this particular panel, the 3 members are Prime Minister, your Prime Minister Modi is the chairperson. Leader of opposition in Lok Sabha is Rahul Gandhi, he is going to be the second member, and a Union Cabinet Minister nominated by PM is actually Amit Shah. So you can see here 2 members from one political party and 1 member from the opposition party is going to be there. So you can again see here that still it is not a neutral panel to basically suggest a CEC is going to be important person to hold elections in India. Anyway, this is the this is going to be the basic composition of the selection committee. Next, we discuss in detail the Ranveer Alabhadia case and the Samay Rena case and the question which we had discussed here. So rather than going into the moral issues of it, ethical issues of it, we had focused ourselves on the legal aspect. And as a lawyer, you have to understand that you are not concerned about moral issues, ethical issues when there is a case of law being discussed in the court of law. And in that particular case, you have to just interpret the law and then try to implement that particular law on the current situation. So in this particular case, we had discussed whether whatever comments were made by Ranveer Alabhadia would they be adjudged as a obscene act as per Indian law. And there we had come to a conclusion through various provision by the reading of various provision as well as Supreme Court cases that those particular terms which they had used, basic statement being made or action which they had done, they might be called as vulgar statements, but they would not be classified as a obscene act under the Indian law. Why? Because in India we basically follow the community standard test, so we are not going to look at those particular works out of context. We are going to look at the whole of program, and we are going to see what is the intention of those particular words. And we had come to this conclusion. Again, if you want to understand in detail, please watch that particular video. But we had come to that conclusion that in that context, the intention of those particular statement was to basically make the audience laugh and not to arouse any kind of sexual feelings in that particular audience or whoever is watching on the television. So yes, those particular terminologies, those particular words which were being stated there, they can be classified as vulgar or purgatory, but those cannot be called as obscene as per law. And in this particular case, we had discussed various case laws, how this particular obscenity law has evolved in India. So everything was discussed in this particular case. Okay, next we discussed basically the WTO, and here we had focused on a particular agreement in WTO known as Agreement on Agriculture. And here this author had argued that there are some section of farmers are suggesting that India should basically leave WTO so that it becomes easier for India to legalize your MSP regime and as well as provide subsidy and export support to the farmers of India. And here the author is arguing that India would not be better off by leaving the WTO, and he's suggesting the opposite, that it would be better for India if we try to strengthen WTO, because he has given various reasons. For example, one reason he has provided that it is very tough to basically finalize bilateral trade agreements on multilateral trade agreement, and he has given example of India only, that we have been trying to finalize our FTAs with various other multilateral regimes and we have not been successful in doing that. So his conclusion is that India is better served if India remains in WTO and try to strengthen WTO. We had also discussed various kinds of subsidy which are also provided under Agreement of Agriculture. Green box and blue box subsidies are subsidies which are actually allowed by WTO, and amber box subsidies are subsidies which are not allowed under your WTO. Okay, what is India's policy leeway? So that also we had discussed that we have a peace clause in WTO which allows us to provide MSP at least for rice and wheat for the meantime, and we can also go for alternate support measures such as our PM Kisan scheme, which is basically an income support scheme, because these are the kind of scheme which comes in the green box subsidy which are allowed under the current regime. So again, this was something which is being argued by the author. So our author has given other arguments also, like how WTO is beneficial for India beyond agriculture also. So it is not just agriculture which is regulated by WTO, it regulates all the other trade sectors like your manufacturing, IT, pharma, and these WTO has been very useful for India for increasing our exports base in this particular sector. So Indian exports going to be affected. Your trade agreements is very hard to finalize. Dispute resolution mechanism is also there in WTO, which actually makes the country follow the rules of it, and it also leads to global trade stability. Otherwise everything would go haywire. Okay, next is we discuss the income tax bill also, and we discuss the key highlights. So after 60 years, after 6 decades, your Income Tax Act of 1961 was finally now amended, totally repealed, and a new act has come up. And what has been the main objective behind this exercise was that there was a need to simplify and shorten and simplify the current Income Tax Act, because it was very complicated. Lot of amendment had been done through the last 60 years. Because of this, it had become very complicated to understand, and there were a lot of dispute because of these complications. So your finance minister had promised in the interim budget that in the next 6 months your Income Tax Act is going to be reviewed again, and then it's going to be simplified. And now finally that task has been completed, and a new income tax bill has been introduced in the parliament for discussion. Now it has been shortened and simpled, and a new concept has been introduced. Tax year concept has been introduced. So tax year is going to replace your previous year in assessment year. So basically before this particular act as per the Income Tax Act of 1961, you had to file your tax returns in the assessment year for the income generated in the previous year. So you had to take care of 2 different financial year. But now what has happened is, now we have introduced a new concept, a tax year concept. So let's say if you have earned a particular income in a single financial year, your assessment year and your previous year is the same. So let's say if you have generated any income in the financial year of 2024-2025, basically it means that your financial starts from April 1st of 2024 and it's end on March 31st 2025, then you are supposed to file your tax return for this particular period by July 1st of 2025, and you do not have to wait, or you do not have to carry forward it to the next year of March 31st of 2026. Okay, so this is the new tax year concept which has been incorporated. Next is digital and data access expansion. So the tax authorities have been now given the power to basically access your digital records also. Very important, virtual digital assets. So now cryptocurrencies have been categorized as a property under your capital assets. So in case in future you are going to get crypto assets, then those would also be taxable as a capital gain tax. Okay, certain obsolete provisions has been removed, and moreover your tax data and many of your tax calculations have now been given in tabular forms. So earlier there were only 18 tables in your IT Act, and now 57 tables are there, which is going to make it easier for common man to understand his tax liability. Okay, and there is no changes in tax rates. So tax rates and slab system has been kept intact. Expected impact, what's going to be expected impact? Because it has become shorter and simpler, higher compliance is going to be there, modernization is also here, and efficient administration is supposedly going to be the expected impact of this particular law. Next is, we also discussed precedent rule imposed in Manipur. Again, I'm not going to give you a weekly wrap up here, because in Manipur this precedent rule has been imposed, and there is a separate MIT already put up on your channel, where I've discussed Article 356 in detail. What is the history of Article 356? What is the constitutional provisions provided in Article 356? What are the limitations on the government? What is the SR Bomai judgment, which had basically restricted the power of central government when it's come to this precedent rule imposition? And just if I want to discuss here, I will only discuss that precedent rule in Manipur has been imposed after continuous violence for last 20 months, and your state government has been unsuccessful in controlling the situation there, which has led to precedent rule being imposed in that particular state as of now. Okay, so history of precedent, etc., we had also discussed. Next is what is happening in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So DRC is one of the countries located in the center of Africa. It's a landlocked country basically, and there is a civil war going on in Democratic Republic of Congo, basically because of 2 tribal groups. One are Hutus and one is Tutsis, and this goes back to 1994 when the Rwandan genocide took place in the territory of Rwanda. And when this Rwandan genocide took place, your Tutsi-led government, a minority government, came in Rwanda, and many Hutus fled to these particular country, Congo. They fled to Congo, which was earlier known as Zaire, and then the Rwandan government basically attacked Congo to basically kill these particular people. This led to 2 Congo War, first Congo War and second Congo War. Second Congo War was so destructive that around 5 lakh people died in that particular war in a span of 6 years only. Then the situation came into control, but now again our rebel group has again turned its head. The name of that rebel group is M23, which is basically a Tutsi-led group being supported by Rwanda, and it is attacking the Hutus in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Many believe that Hutus is just an excuse. The main purpose of M23 is basically to acquire resource-rich regions of Congo, basically the South Kivu province, which is very resource-rich. So that might also be the primary reason why your M23 is trying to control those particular area. So we had discussed all of this in context that M23 has been able to successfully capture Goma city, which is a resource-rich city, and now it is moving to the next city in question. Okay, so this was the context of this particular news. Next particular news which we discussed is basically Jagdeep Dhambar had made a statement regarding that only the parliament has the power to remove a high court judge, and he is correct as per constitution also, because as per the constitution under article 124 and 217, it is only the parliament which has the power to impeach the Supreme Court and High Court judge. So the context of this particular statement is that there is a particular particular judge in the UP High Court, Justice Shekhar Yadav, who had made certain remarks regarding a minority community, and opposition parties have been arguing that the parliament should impeach such a particular High Court judge because he does not deserve to be on the High Court bench. And now this person, Jagdeep Dhamkar, has made this statement that only parliament has the power to remove it, because certain opposition leader has stated that if the Rajya Sabha chairman does not accept this impeachment motion, then we are going to move to the Supreme Court. In this context, this particular statement was made. We discussed the grounds for removal, which are only two: proven misbehavior or incapacity. Then we discussed what is the procedure. So procedure is given in Judges Inquiry Act. So it starts with initiation of motion, which can initiate from Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. Then there is an inquiry by a committee. These three are the members of that inquiry committee. Then this inquiry committee provides a report to the parliament. Then there is a discussion in both the house in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, and on the basis of that discussion and on the basis of this particular report, finally there is a voting on in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, and on the basis of this voting, if both the houses pass that particular impeachment motion by a majority of the votes, then in this particular case that is passed by Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, and then it goes to the president. Now president has the final say when it's come to removal of that particular High Court judge. If the president feels like that he should be removed, then president has no option but to remove him, and that's how your High Court judge can be removed. The same procedure used for a Supreme Court judge also. What is the history of judge removal? So the simple answer is that no judge of Supreme Court or High Court has ever been impeached, but there have been three instances: one of Justice V. Ramaswamy, one of Justice Sumitra Sen, and one of Justice P.D. Dinakaran. In these three cases, your impeachment motions were initiated. However, for one reason or the other, everything is mentioned in the slide. For one reason or the other, it did not succeed in both the houses. So as of now, no judge of the Supreme Court or High Court has been impeached so far. Next, we discuss your free movement regime has again started between India and Myanmar. So India and Myanmar have this unique mechanism where tribal population living on both sides of the borders of Indo-Myanmar border up to 16 kilometers can enter the other country without the requirement of visa. They can stay there for 14 days and then they are supposed to go back. So this particular mechanism, this particular regime was not open for the last 20 months because of the Manipur crisis. But now the situation has normalized to an extent, so that's why this this particular outpost have now been again opened for basically people movement also. So again we have discussed this FMR also. Next, which we discussed very recently, is basically your Prime Minister Modi's visit to the US. My suggestion would be, please watch this particular February 15th recording in detail, because there we had majorly focused on this India-US different deals, not just trade deals, but your defense deals, your trade deals, and your energy securities deals, your people-to-people deals, etc. have been discussed in detail. So if you will go through there, you would find out whatever has been discussed. Again, for your benefit, all the slides are mentioned here also. So we had discussed US-India Compact, so you need to know the full form of this particular compact also. Asia Initiative is another initiative which has been launched. Third initiative which has been launched is US-India Trust. Another initiative which is launched is Indus Innovation. Another initiative which has been announced is your Strategic Mineral Recovery Initiative. Another initiative under Quad which has been announced is Indian Ocean Strategic Venture. So these are the new initiative which has been launched. If you want to discuss more, if you want to know more regarding India-US basic agreements or joint statement, please go through the 15th of February recording to understand this in detail. Okay, Saturday it was, and then we discussed this. Next is we also discussed wholesale inflation almost unchanged. So we had already discussed retail inflation this month, this particular week only, and we discussed wholesale inflation there also. And on February 10th, your retail inflation data came up, and on February of 14th your wholesale data came up, and as per wholesale inflation we do not have to worry, because wholesale inflation was in control and it was unchanged at 2.3%, which is a good news for Indian consumers also. Okay, so we had discussed that also. Okay, so student, these were all the important news headlines. In case you need detailed discussion on these, please go through your daily news analysis from February 9 to February 15. You will find out the detailed explanation of all these particular news. This is a weekly wrap up. So here we basically try to focus and try to only provide you with the crux of the important news. Okay, so again if you want to know in detail, please watch that video. Okay, so with this message, let's end today's session. Thank you and have a very nice day.